Hello and welcome to today's Mind Your Career program. My name is Adam Sylvain and I work with the Alumni Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled 10 Ways New Managers Can Advance in Their Careers. Today we will welcome Hallie Crawford. Hallie is a certified career coach and national career expert based in Atlanta, Georgia. Her company, HallieCrawford.com, and team of coaches have helped thousands of people worldwide identify and transition into their dream career, effectively navigate their job search, and enhance their performance at work. Hallie is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including US News, Forbes.com, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Fox Business News. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to cede the floor to Hallie.
Thank you so much, Adam. I have to do my little technology thing for a second here, everybody, so I appreciate your patience as I come online. So I am Hallie Crawford, thrilled to be here with you all today and really appreciate your time. We are going to be talking about, as Adam mentioned, 10 ways new managers can advance in their career. So I am a certified career coach and the founder of my own company, HallieCrawford.com. And I wanted to just let you all know, too, that I have a special affinity for people who lived in Chicago at any time or from Chicago and the University of Chicago, because I lived in Chicago for about 10 years a long time ago. So we are here to talk about how new managers can advance in their career. And one of the things that I wanted to mention to you is that I completely understand how it feels to be kind of new to something, especially as a new manager, because when I started my business 18 years ago, I didn't have any staff. It was just me. And over time, as I grew my coaching practice, I had to understand and learn how to manage people effectively, not just the vendors that we work with, but also I now have a team of coaches, resume writers, and staff members for my business as well. So I get how this can feel and a little bit overwhelming. So the tips that I'm going to give you today are things that I have used myself to improve my strengths and skills as a new manager. And also, these are the tips and advice that we give to our clients as well to help them with these same things. And if you notice, as I go through the presentation or webinar today, I may be looking to the left, or my left at least, a little bit. I have a split screen here, and I'm just kind of checking to make sure that we're on time and everything else. So that's what's going on there. So first of all, as I said, I've been coaching and training for over 18 years. I know I might sound like I'm 12. I'm actually 46 and started my coaching practice when I lived in Chicago in my late 20s. And one of the things, as I mentioned a moment ago, is we understand as coaches, and I myself, I understand how overwhelming this kind of new manager thing can be, in part because of, if you look at the first slide here, a lot of us, especially as new managers, when this is something new for us, we can have this sense of feeling what's called the impostor syndrome. And we understand how it can feel to be in over your head, like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I figure this out? Number two, we understand how it feels to think you're a fraud or feel like you're a fraud and you don't really know what you're doing and you're trying to just get your sea legs. And we also get how it can feel to be unsure how to be successful in your career long term as a manager or otherwise, and overwhelmed with these new responsibilities. So a lot of the new managers we work with, and these were the feelings that I had as well when I became a new manager, these are the things that are common, or we find are most common kind of obstacles or fears for new managers. And we're going to tell you and show you how to overcome those today, okay? So I want you to know, as part of this, is that you're not alone. Becoming a new manager can be very stressful, and it's understandable. According to a study by the HR consultancy firm DDI, about 6 out of 10 managers said that becoming a boss for the first time was second in stress level only to a divorce. Now, I don't want you to read this, everyone, and freak out and say, oh my gosh, like this is going to be really stressful. Just understand that you're not alone. This is normal, and this is exactly why it's a great thing that you're here today, because we will help you with practical, tangible advice that will help you overcome these fears. But I also want you to be aware of these fears up front, which we're going to talk about in a moment, so you can kind of move those aside. The good news is that you can take control of your career path and being a new manager and start developing your strategic career plan right now for your management role currently and also long term. So we help clients with this all the time. Our percentage with in terms of satisfaction with our clients and working with us is 98%. So just know that it is possible to get your sea legs with this quickly and easily. You just have to take the action steps that we're going to talk about today. Okay? So here is our agenda. We are going to talk about the 5 most common obstacles that we find that new managers encounter when they're new to this position. We're going to give you 10 tips to get ahead and incorporate into your strategic career plan, as well as at the very end, I do want you all to have and walk away with at least 2 action steps that you will take in the next week here in order to implement the advice that we're giving you today. As Adam said, we are recording this presentation, and you will get a recording of that afterwards. If anyone would like a copy of the PowerPoint slides directly, though, we would be happy to share those with you. Just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com for a copy of the presentation. And just so you know as well, everyone, there is a handout. It's been uploaded into the GoToWebinar system, so feel free to download that to help you follow along today, or even to help you as a tool to remind you of the action steps you need to take later on when we're finished. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the 5 most common obstacles first. So these are the things that we have found with our clients who are new managers that are the biggest obstacles for them. And you may have some other ones, and we are actually going to do a poll here in just a second, and we're going to have 3 different obstacles in there. I believe it's 3. You'll see the choices in just a moment. But we want to hear from you all. What are the most common obstacles, or the one that most applies to you, we should say. So first of all, I want you to kind of do this inventory for yourself and look at this checklist on the slide. Which of these obstacles applies to you? And I want you to identify, please, the first one, the biggest one for you, but also make note of some of the other ones, if any of those are part of what's going on for you as well. So first of all, thinking a boss, one of the obstacles is thinking being a boss gives you instant authority. So a lot of times our clients just kind of make that assumption. Now I have this job title, now I'm in charge, and I get to tell people what to do all day. Okay, well, that's kind of an overstatement and a generalization that I'm making, but you get the drift, okay? So a lot of times our new managers will think, okay, so now because I have this title, I get to do these things. The second, I would say, most common obstacle that we find with our new managers is that they're trying too hard to maintain the same relationships that they had before, or they make the assumption that they will have those same relationships that they had before. And that's not the case. When you are a manager and the boss now, your relationships inevitably are going to change. This is hard for people, and I understand that, but it's inevitable, and it's something you'll get used to and you can adjust to. The third obstacle we find is a lot of new managers try too hard to be liked. And sometimes they might start making exceptions for people they know well, or give preferential treatment, whatever it is. And bottom line is, though, that they're too worried about being liked, and you've got to be careful about that obstacle. And the last 2 on the list here is thinking your way of doing things is always or the only right way to do things. And finally, not knowing or fully, understanding how much work goes into being a new manager, okay? So Adam, if you could pull up this first poll for us, we'd like to hear from everybody, which is your most common obstacle of the ones that we're giving you on this list? And again, as I said, as we're taking these responses, please feel free to write these down so that you can fully understand, okay, these are my top 2, whatever it is, because we want you to address all of them, because understanding them up front, kind of awareness is the first step, right? And then it's about taking action to overcome them. So, and Adam, if you could share the results with me, that would be great. I always have trouble seeing where they are on my toolbar here and being able to read them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the poll is launched now, and we're getting our responses kind of clocked in here. So about half our attendees have voted. So I'll just give a few more seconds, and then I'll close the poll and share the results with everyone.
Perfect. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys at once, so just try to digest what you can. And remember, too, you'll have the recording, and you can have the presentation afterwards as well if needed.
All right, so sharing those results now, we had 12% that said their biggest obstacle at this point is thinking being a boss gives instant authority. We had 29%, which was the largest percentage, that mentioned trying to maintain the same relationships as the biggest obstacle. 12% trying too hard to be liked. 24% thinking your way of doing things is the only right way, and another 24% not knowing how much work goes into being a manager. So a good split.
Good blend. Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you all for sharing that. We greatly appreciate it. Keep in mind, part of why we do these is to understand that you're not alone, that these are the common obstacles. Please, when you're finished with our webinar today, identify the top 2 for you, as I said, so that you can start to understand what you need to work on the most. All of these are totally normal. And I'm actually glad that the first one, because sometimes I think that's the toughest one to overcome for people. I'm glad that the first one was one of the lower options for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our 10 tips to help you get settled and be successful as a new manager. Okay, so if you take a look at this first slide here, we talked about this already for a second. Which obstacle applies to you? What are your kind of weak points, the things that you need to overcome? So identify what those top 2 are from the poll that we just talked about in the slide just beforehand. And think about, okay, is it, managing how your relationships have changed? Is it that you need to communicate a little bit more with your employees? Whatever it is, you want to start to kind of take stock of what your, not just your fears are, everyone, or what your obstacles or assumptions might be that could get in the way, but also you want to identify what are your weak spots, so to speak, or your areas for opportunity, as we like to say, the weak spots that you have in terms of being a manager. And we're going to talk about those a little bit further on in the webinar, but I want you to start thinking about those right now, okay? So you want to identify your top 2 obstacles, whether it's managing how the relationships have changed, or I need to communicate more, with my staff. I don't want to be trying to do it all alone. So this is one of the things that I want you all to recognize and pay attention to as well, is a lot of new managers feel like they're kind of in a silo, like now they're the boss of people that they used to work with or whatever the situation is, and they feel like, okay, now I'm all by myself and I don't have the, my colleagues and my team anymore. So you need to, and it's a very good idea to find a mentor, whether it's within your organization or outside your organization, that can help you feel less alone. And by the way, everybody, don't try to do it all alone. That's not the way to go, because you'll just feel even more siloed and alone as a result. And what we recommend is, as a start, develop a plan to address these weak spots and these obstacles in the first quarter of this year. Okay, so we're at the second quarter now, so you want to do it in this next quarter, and you want to write down the obstacles and things you need to address, what your weak points are, as part of your strategic career plan for the rest of this year, okay? Tip number 2 is to earn their respect. So this goes back a little bit to the first obstacle that we talked about assuming that, suddenly you have this authority just because you have the job title. So some of the advice we have here is you need to earn the respect of the people who are working for you, and you need to do it in multiple different ways. The advice on this slide is what we typically give to our clients. You want to make sure that you're listening to your employees, and not just kind of passively listening and then brushing aside what they say, but really listening and taking time to, one-on-one with them on a regular basis to listen to what's going on with them, what challenges are they having, in their role, and what opinions do they have about, how things need to change or improve. This doesn't mean just because you're listening to them that you have to take their advice every time. But the listening is a critical piece for people to feel heard and feel like they can trust, and then therefore they will also respect you. Be respectful to them. I mean, this goes without saying. You want to be respectful of their opinion in the moment, even if it's the wrong one or not something that you want to implement. You still want to let them know, thank you for sharing, I really appreciate this. And you can say something like, I'll take that into consideration as I'm making my decision. Again, you don't have to go with what they're saying, but come up with a few things that you can say that allow people to feel heard and understood, even if you can't go with what their opinion is, okay? The other tip, number 3 here, in terms of earning respect, is to ask people questions first, to empower them and try to understand where they're coming from, then be authoritative. So obviously, as a boss and a manager, you have to make a decision and you have to be authoritative. that's, part of what comes with the role, obviously. But a really good kind of coaching tool that we advise our clients is to ask questions before you just go right into, this is what we're going to do. Garner feedback, get their opinion about things, how do they feel about those things, and ask really powerful questions, not just yes or no questions, but how can we improve this program or system? Things that assume a positive outcome and are not just a yes or no answer. When you use and leverage powerful questions, and this is a very good coaching tool that most coaches will use, when you use powerful questions, it assumes a positive outcome and it forces the person to come up with a solution instead of just a yes or no answer that shuts down the conversation. It opens up possibilities and it also opens up the conversation for more opportunities and different perspectives. Take time every single month to get to know their strengths, their personality type, and their values. So one of the things you need to do, not just to earn the respect of your employees, but also to lead a very effective team and leverage the different people that work for you in terms of what their strengths are and what they bring to the table, is you really need to get to know who they are, not just as a professional, but also as a person. What are their values and what makes them tick? You can ask them why they enjoy their jobs. What are their, most enjoyable tasks or projects that they've ever worked on? Ask them what they feel their strengths are and how they want to leverage those on a regular basis, and are they leveraging them? So find out more about what motivates them, but also take the time to learn what their strengths and kind of skill set is, so that you're plugging and, putting them into the right spot in terms of your team, and you're leveraging them in the right way, okay? And then finally, you need to work towards accepting that your relationships with former coworkers has changed. It's different. I would have an open, direct conversation with them about it and say, if you know them well enough to have a very open conversation, ask them how they feel about it. And what can we do to work together differently now, but still maintain that, the friendship that we had, or the, professional relationship, and maintain it in the right way. If it's possible for you to do so, I would invite them to have an open conversation about what you all can do and what are kind of the new parameters or boundaries or guidelines, if you will, for your new relationship, because your situation has changed, okay? Let's take a look at the third tip, and I referenced this just a moment ago, and we do want to do the poll here, the second poll, in just a moment, how many people have a mentor. But one of the things that we highly recommend, especially as I said before, so that you don't feel alone in your new role, is to identify and find a mentor for yourself. It can be someone who is inside your organization or outside. There are benefits to both. And if you can find two mentors long-term, one that's inside and one outside, that's great too. Inside of your organization, obviously they can give you kind of insight into the culture and the norms and the things you need to do specifically for your company in order to move forward and move up. Outside your organization, they can also give you just kind of industry-wide or industry-specific advice, but give you an objective perspective on what it's like at other places. So like I said, there's value to both. If I were to choose one or the other, I would start with a mentor inside of your organization first, because I think that value they bring, kind of that insider knowledge, can be more helpful from the get-go. And like I said, one of each is ideal. If you look on the slide here, I would set up regular meetings with them. This is a time to do that. You may have had a mentor in the past for your career, but now that you're a new manager, it's really critical to have somebody to lean on. So I would set up regular meetings with them. Monthly is a great thing. You take them to lunch once a month, or coffee, or it's a phone call, or whatever it is. But ask them, identify the mentor, and ask them how they can set up the relationship, or what works for them, I should say. If monthly, quick conversations for a half an hour are the best they can do, that's okay too, okay? Ask them for advice and make sure that you are open to feedback. And by the way, ideally, everyone, being open to feedback goes back to feedback from your employees as well and your new co-managers. That's a critical piece to being an effective manager, is not just accepting the feedback, but also asking for it. So it's okay to ask for, feedback and input. You want to balance that, obviously, with demonstrating your confidence, okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit more, and we can in the Q&A portion if we need to. but at the very least, if someone provides you with feedback, you need to be open to it and take into account what they're saying. And finally, and Adam, if you can go ahead and set up this next poll, that would be great. Make sure that you take advantage of any training programs, either that your organization offers or that, online courses. We like lynda.com, Lynda, for online courses. We hear great things about those classes. The General Assembly is another in-person training option that is now open in a lot of cities across the U.S. And there could be, even through your industry, a new manager's training program through your association. So definitely check out industry-specific associations that either you belong to or you need to go ahead and join it, especially as a new manager, to understand and leverage whatever training or resources they may have at your disposal to understand being a new manager as well. Okay, so our second poll is how many currently have a mentor? And I do want, and then Adam can read out the results here, but I do want you to think about a mentor in this case as for you as a new manager and how to develop that skill set. So as I said, if you had one from before, you need to make sure that you move into kind of this topic area. Okay,
Great. So,
Adam, what have we got?
yeah, we've got just about all of our answers coming in here. So I'll go ahead and close and share that with everyone. So we have
Awesome.
a breakdown of 35% say yes, they do currently have a mentor, and 65% that do not.
Okay, good. All right, so for the 65% of you that do not, please go ahead and start looking for one. By the way, just know that I don't expect it to happen overnight. This can take time. Your alumni association from or through the University of Chicago is a great place to try to identify possible mentors, because if you send an email to someone through that online database, their input and referral from alumni association, they're much more likely, obviously, to respond to you. And no, Adam didn't pay me to say that. I tell all of our clients that. And for those of you who already have a mentor, that's fantastic. Make sure that you think about, from the obstacles that we talked about just a moment ago, what are your top issues or challenges, if you will. Make sure that those topics of conversation are going to come up in your next meeting with your mentor. Okay, so let's look at tip number 4, and this is continuously enhancing your skill set. So in order to continue to progress and be successful as a new manager, you want to include the coursework, like we started to talk about in the last slide, in your annual career plan, in your strategic career plan, to enhance your qualifications. In this case, too, in addition to looking outside of your organization, we do want you to ask your boss or HR department either for ideas, and if you already have some ideas from looking at lynda.com or General Assembly, for example, or any continuing or adult education locally, run it by them first to make sure that it's going to be relevant for your job and they're supportive of it. In some cases, your organization will have funds to be able to support you with that training. In some cases, not. But we at least want, if you're going to spend the time and maybe the money, we want it to be the right thing for you. So do run it by them. There are a couple of other websites on the slide here. Lynda.com we mentioned, Coursera is another one, and industry-specific courses we mentioned as well. In some cases, a certification, everyone, not a certification necessarily to be a new manager, but a certification within your industry. In some cases, that can help you with the experience or expertise, if you will, that you may need as a new manager in order to move forward. So in some cases, everyone consider that there's the management skills, but then there's also, what expertise are you expected to have now as a new manager in terms of understanding the software that your team manages or whatever it is. So consider certifications as well. Local college courses can be an option to check out. And what we recommend as a way to kind of validate and make sure that you're checking out and enrolling in the right courses is not just to ask your boss or HR department like we referenced, but you can also take a look and kind of do a quick survey using LinkedIn and research the LinkedIn profiles of the people that are in higher level positions, either at your position now or even the next step. So when you're thinking about your long-term plan and your career progression, at least start to understand and plug into your plan, okay, these are the classes that I would like to take over the next year or whatever it is. And you can look and see if there are common courses that a lot of people have taken listed on their LinkedIn profile to get a sense of what's valued in the marketplace. And I also recommend too, and over time, conducting informational interviews with people in higher level positions outside of just your mentor. So make sure that you attend industry associations and just network with people and start, if you're not, very good about or don't network as much as you should, and I can be guilty of that as well, I'll admit, make sure that you're putting yourself out there so that you are networking and talking with people at your level on a regular basis and people higher up as well, so that you can continue to learn from them, even if it's not in a formal mentor relationship, just kind of informally when you're talking with them at an association meeting. So make sure that you put networking events and association events on your calendar at least once a month, at the very least once a quarter, that you're attending something so that, you're staying fresh with industry specific kind of trends, if you will. Tip number 5 is to take initiative, okay? And here's the deal. Like, this one is obvious. Take the initiative, be proactive. But there's a couple things on here that I want to kind of add to what you might think this one is about. In terms of taking initiative, I think a lot of new managers, and I see this, is they tend to kind of under-communicate a little bit, and they don't provide as much context as they should in terms of why a task needs to be performed or what this project's goal is or what it's about. Because when we're used to just kind of being a worker bee and just going and doing something, that context, we're not in charge of, providing that or always understanding it, okay? And as a new leader, you need to begin to think about, okay, what are the needs of my team and the people I'm managing? What kind of context or background do I need to provide to them so that they can be effective on this task I'm asking them to do or this project I want them to complete? So err on the side, especially at the beginning, of over-communicating versus under-communicating. Because a lot of times, like I said, we find people usually under-communicate at the very beginning. The second piece of advice on here is to observe and emulate other managers in your organization. So not just talking with them, whether it's a mentor or an informational interview, but also pay attention to the other leaders in your organization. What are the soft skills that they have that you feel you need to adopt or address or, improve in yourself? And when I say soft skills, I mean, is it, better handling or leading team meetings? Is it they are very good at managing or handling change, or when, employees are uncomfortable or having a hard time? Are they great at managing conflict? Whatever it is that they have, just kind of notice what is their brand, what is their, skill set in terms of their soft skills, and create a list of those things, at least 3 things that you have observed that seem very positive as part of your organization's culture that you would like to work on and improve. And finally, one of the things to take initiative too is to start to, as a manager, build your brand a little bit more on social media and within your industry and organization. And when I say social media, I always suggest obviously starting with LinkedIn. It's not like you have to write an article every single week and post every single week, but start to get more involved on LinkedIn so that you are building your brand professionally, because that will last you well outside of, when you're at your organization. And when it's time for a promotion, you'll have this brand on LinkedIn and have a lot more kudos from clients and employees to add to your presentation for your promotion. But also showing that you're a thought leader in your industry makes a big difference for hiring you for that next position as well, and just simply being influential within your organization. So we recommend, whether you write an article once a month or you share something, twice a month on LinkedIn, you comment on other people's articles and suggestions, you participate in LinkedIn groups, do something, set a goal for yourself to do something on LinkedIn at least twice a month, whether it's sharing something, liking something else, or commenting on someone else's post, to start building your brand there on LinkedIn. Tip number 6, let's move to this one, is to be confident. So any of those people that, have that obstacle or fear, like I did too, of I don't know what I'm doing, and that sense of impostor syndrome, remember that your attitude underneath, how you're feeling underneath, it affects your actions that you take, which in turn affects your outcome. We all know how we feel when we go into a room for networking or into a presentation and we feel, confident versus we're scared and, freaked out, okay? So you need to pay attention to those obstacles that we talked about before in order to start to overcome them, Write a list of what your strengths are already as a new manager, if that is one of the things you need to do to boost your confidence. Make sure that you save the kudos that you've gotten from former coworkers or any kudos that you get over time from your clients or employees, to save in kind of like a brag book, if you will, on your desktop, so that you've got something to kind of refer to remind you of your strengths to help boost your confidence as well. 85% of our clients, they tell us that they are their biggest obstacle to achieving their career goals. So 9 times out of 10, give or take everybody, we are the ones that are getting in our own way. And so this is why these obstacles, although it may seem like, okay, why are we talking about that up front? It's really, really critical because it's going to impact or affect how you come across to your employees. So you want to identify the areas that you feel less confident. And what I mean by this is, are there specific situations that you're having a harder time with? Are you less confident in front of a specific group of people? Is it that you're less confident when you're talking one-on-one with someone? Is it one person that is more intimidating to you than somebody else's? So identify the situations and or the people or whatever it is that where you feel less confident, and start to develop, like it says on the slide here, affirmations for those areas, or the brag book, like I said, or ask for feedback or an opinion from a trusted coworker, what they think and how you should handle the situation and how you come across, okay? The other thing we want you to do as well is to watch your body language. So notice the people in your current workplace who already seem confident and come across as confident as managers. What is their body language? And what for you makes you feel more confident? Is it when you sit up straight or when you're sitting back a little bit? Is it when you have your hands on the table, or do you need something to hold on to like a pen because that makes you feel more confident and calm? Whatever it is, pay attention to your body language, because that's a critical piece, remember, to communication and how you're coming across, whether you're being or coming across as confident or feeling not so confident, okay? So watch your body language, and it could be something that you do for a whole day. And for example, that one day you have a journal and you just pay close attention to, okay, what am I doing with my hands? How do I sit when I'm in meetings? Make sure that you're sitting up straight and that you're engaged. So pay attention to how you need to adjust and fix it, as well as what's common right now, okay? So that's tip number 6, be confident. Let's move to tip number 7, and talk about developing your leadership skills. So this one is kind of obvious as a new manager, right? And by the way, everyone, on the next slide here, we have kind of a leadership assessment that I want to show you that will help you understand and identify the top areas you need to be focusing on as a leader and help you identify what you need to work on. So in terms of leadership skills, though, we have put some of the top leadership skills we feel are important on this slide. You want to make sure that you're able to motivate other people on your team. That's a critical piece to being a good leader. You want to make sure that you're taking the right leadership role in meetings or within your team and doing that in the right way, obviously, to lead them in the right direction. One of the things that we have found is critically important is how to handle conflict effectively. I mentioned that before. And also, quick drink of water, sorry. The thing I mentioned before, too, that is really important is how to effectively manage change. So if the organization is going through some sort of, acquisition or whatever is going on, being able to manage change is really important as well. Both of these two topics, by the way, everyone, conflict and managing change, highly recommend courses like on lynda.com for those, or even a book on Amazon, because those are two really big things that a lot of people don't handle as well as they could, and they're critically important to being a solid leader. And then finally, one of the books that we really like too is to develop your emotional intelligence. And the book here is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. We find this one as an easier read. And the emotional intelligence, I was talking with a client before. He used to be, it was actually this morning, he was the former CEO of Invesco. And he said to me point blank just this morning, he said, Hallie, a big part of why I was successful is not just because I understood the, financial element of my job and how to understand and analyze the data to move us forward and make sure that we were making progress. He said, it's because I'm a people person, and I was able to get people on the bus and, get their buy-in, because he's a very genuine, authentic guy. He's a great guy. And he was able to manage and, adjust and change their culture in order for them to move forward to the next level as an organization. So this emotional intelligence stuff is critically important, everyone, as I'm sure you know, but I just wanted to give you that example to kind of have it hit home. So here are the top 10 leadership skills. I would recommend that you all get the presentation, print this out for yourselves. This is from Development Dimensions International. It's kind of a tongue twister. It's a consulting firm that is it's been around forever, very highly regarded. But these are the areas that they say are the top 10 leadership skills that leaders require today in the workplace. What I would recommend is I would rank yourself in each area, obviously, and identify your top 3 areas for development. Start with 3 just to, keep it simple and easy. And one of the things that I would highly recommend everyone does as well is take a risk and ask your supervisor, your boss, your new boss, whatever, ask them how they see you and what are the areas that you need to improve and where are your strengths as well. So you want to focus on both your strengths and the areas for improvement. But I highly recommend you get some outside feedback also because it can be incredibly helpful. If any of you feel like you need additional advice on anything that we've talked about today, the 10 leadership strengths, whatever it is, I'm happy to offer a free career strategy session. Please just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. I'll reach out to you to get that set up. What I wanted you all to know is that I understand that, this advice we're giving goes kind of across the board, but I realize that everyone can have a very specific, different situation. So if you feel like that's the case for you and you're like, but this is my situation in this way, please feel free to set up that strategy session. I'm happy to talk with you about that. Okay, tip number 8 is to ask for and implement constructive feedback. So we talked about this a little bit before. Take a look at the slide here, everyone. In terms of feedback, the incorrect response to feedback, as we can all imagine, is on this slide. You don't want to dismiss it. You don't want to just blame the other person or criticize them. That's especially not going to go well as a new manager. You want to make sure that you at least hear people's thoughts. Sometimes they just need to vent and get it off their chest a little bit. And the correct response, ideally, is to accept the feedback, implement changes, and make improvements, as a result. Now, here's the deal. Again, this is not that you have to believe everything that they're saying and agree with it, and you don't have to adopt their way of thinking or take the action steps that they're suggesting. You're the boss, you get to decide. But at least take a moment to filter through what is true or maybe accurate about what they're saying instead of getting defensive, which a lot of times is our natural response, okay? So remember that your way is not always the right way, and that even if, let's say, the majority of what you're thinking or your way is the right way, there might be some other ways that you can implement some of the other elements of what your team is saying to you as well, because that can actually improve it. And as part of this, what we want you to be good about as much as possible is to ask for that feedback and input. Well, what do you think? Does this make sense? Should we be doing something, a different way? What's your opinion on this or your experience? Then you can go back and you can make the decision that you need to make. But at least soliciting that feedback can be incredibly important, and it empowers your team. Okay, so tip number 9, we're almost to tip number 10 here, and we're going to do one last poll here. But tip number 9 is to build your brand, and we talked about this a little bit before with LinkedIn. Write, share, and comment on articles. Consider writing articles or blogs every once in a while for your industry association, whether it's their blog or their newsletter. But this is another way that you can build your brand outside of your organization and within your industry as well. Consider serving on the board of an industry association to kind of get more involved so that you stay in the know. And Adam, if you want to go ahead and pull up this next poll, that would be great. Curious who's currently active on LinkedIn, let's say at least, twice a month. That'll be sort of our guideline there. Present at a conference. This is another way to hone your expertise, build your brand, get your name out there in your industry. And consider also volunteering your time for projects outside of your department. If your expertise could be used somewhere else, this is another way to kind of get your name out there within your organization as well. All right, Adam, if you could let us know the results when you've got them, that would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's launched, and we've got folks weighing in now. So I'll just give just a few more seconds to collect those responses, and I'll close and share out what we find.
Okay, cool. And I'm just making notes as you guys do this, so that's what I'm doing.
All right, so it looks like we have 57% that are active on LinkedIn, and you said that kind of being within the last couple months, and 43% that said no to that question.
Okay, good. So we've got a number that are currently active, so that's awesome. So if you are currently active, hopefully we gave you some additional ideas, some other things that you can do, including participating in LinkedIn groups. And if you're not, like I said, set a goal of twice a month to do something in terms of LinkedIn. That's all you have to do to kind of get the ball rolling. And once you do it, just know that the momentum will build and, it'll become more natural for you. One of the things that I've been mentioning several times, and I just wanted to bring this up before we move to Q&A today too, is we have a copy of kind of a template of a strategic career plan. So if anyone feels like they would like that, to start writing down some of the advice that we gave you today and it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's based off of our ideal career model. So there's categories that will help guide your goals and your action steps. Please feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. We'd be happy to share that with you if you'd like a free copy of that, just to help you out. And tip number 10, and then we'll go to Q&A here in just a moment. Tip number 10 is to keep an accomplishments document. So this is not just for, if you think you're going to be searching for a new job in the next year or whatever it is. This is also for getting a promotion or, getting a new job in the next couple of years or 5 years, whatever it is. Keep an accomplishments document like on your desktop, somewhere that's easily accessible where you can, get to it at any time and revise it. You want to list your accomplishments that you have achieved in your new role. You want to make sure that you keep kudos from clients or employees or anyone else, testimonials that people have given you, whether it's, emails that they've sent you, you want to copy and paste those, but also verbal commentary. You want to ask for recommendations on LinkedIn because, by the way, when our clients are talking about, okay, I want to start job searching, they're concerned, understandably, that their employer is going to notice that they're getting a bunch of recommendations and that they're making changes to their profile. So it's better to be active on LinkedIn right now so that when that time comes, or if you want to start job searching, it's not obvious. It's like you're always active anyway, okay? And you also want to write down in your accomplishments document, obviously, any skills or experience or strengths that you've developed. Keep in mind, everyone, this is not just skills or experience in terms of hard skills like software you learned, et cetera. It's also the soft skills that you've developed, because remember how important that emotional intelligence piece is as well. Keep a brag book. This is your accomplishments document. It's the same thing. And I would say take about 10 to 15 minutes every single month to update that document. I would write that in your calendar as an appointment or a task for yourself to remind you to do this. It's much better to do it now versus when people come to us and they say, oh my gosh, I'm applying for this new job and I need a resume tomorrow and I've forgotten, the nitty gritty or the nuts and bolts of the things I've been doing for the past 5 years. Easier to have something to pull from like that accomplishments document. So again, let's just review for a moment here the 3 things we talked about today, and then we'll move to our action steps. We talked about the obstacles. You want to identify what your top 2 obstacles are so that you can start addressing those using the advice that we gave you. The top tips to move up in your organization. Another way to think about that is obviously be successful as a new manager, and then action steps. So let's talk about those action steps. So we would like everyone to write down right now, please take a moment and write down 2 things that you will do in the next week. It could be any of these things on the slide or something else. Ask your coworkers or employees for feedback. How are things going so far in this area? Do I need to communicate a little bit more in this way? Maybe it's that you need to update your resume or create that accomplishments document, just so you have a running list of things. Do you need to talk to your boss about training opportunities, for example, or the leadership wheel? So go ahead and write those down for us now. Remember, I'm happy to do that free strategy session with you if you feel like you need specific advice about your situation. Please know too, as we get to the Q&A portion here in just a moment, everybody, if we don't get to your question because of time constraints, don't hesitate to email me at hallie@halliecrawford.com, either one of the emails. I'll get the question, happy to answer that for you as well. And if anyone would like to talk further about career coaching to help you with these goals or anything else, I'd be happy to chat with you about that. These are some of the testimonials that we get from our clients and some of the organizations where people have been placed over 18 years the list is really long, as you can imagine. But I absolutely love what I do. We all do. So we'd be happy to help you. And the last quick thought, and I want you all to please go ahead and start formulating your questions. And please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat box as well, because we'll get to that right now. My kind of last, presentation thought, if you will, is the greatest risk in life is not taking one. So any of those obstacles or fears that you have going on, this quote is the quote that always helps me move past the obstacles that I have, because I have them too. Coaches need coaches as well. And I always remind myself, do I want to tell my son, when I'm 80, sitting in a rocking chair, imparting wisdom, do I want to tell him that I tried, even if I failed? I tried to do something different. I tried to move up, move forward, or that I didn't try at all because I was scared? You know the answer. We want to say that we at least tried and we took that risk. All right, so keep that quote in mind as you progress. And let's go ahead and move to the Q&A portion. Adam, as you said, I've got about till, 5 minutes till the hour, give or take. And please remember, everybody, like we said, if we don't get to your question, please feel free to just email us. I'll put my contact info up here so that you've got it.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll get transition now. So if you haven't written your questions in yet, remember that you can submit those to the questions box on the control panel. So feel free to type those in now if you haven't. I know we've had a couple people. This is kind of a more of a housekeeping reminder. We've had a couple people asking about the slides for this presentation. And so just as a reminder, I will be emailing out the link to the recording. If you would like the slides, Hallie said she's happy to provide those. You just have to email admin@halliecrawford.com. So,
Perfect.
But let's go ahead and jump in. So we had a great question here from one of our attendees on, you mentioned the importance of both seeking and receiving feedback from others. And one of the attendees is asked, what is a good response to feedback that is a personal attack?
Okay, great question. So I would say something along the lines of, thank you for, or I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and, being open with me about your thoughts and concerns. I would try to direct them towards, is there some constructive, improvement or advice you might have for me to adjust or change what you're thinking? And the reason why I say this, and I know we're talking about a personal attack, so it's touchy because you can't just roll over with those situations, obviously. But I would try to direct them towards, okay, what are they trying to get at, and what is it that they're wanting or thinking should be different, so that you can then get from them, if it's something that's, there is some actual tangible, reasonable thing that they need to be different, whether it's about you or something else, to try to get them out of the personal attack mode. So get it into like, okay, what's the problem here that we need to solve? Is it a communication style thing that they just, it rubs them the wrong way or whatever it is? So I would say, okay, appreciate you sharing. Let's talk about, what needs to be different. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts to get them into positive mode instead of just complaining mode? If it's something that is, I hate to say it, but this sometimes happens, that's abusive, it's definitely something I would take to and talk with HR about. If it's that serious and difficult, and if it's been happening frequently over time, and let's say you've tried something like what I recommended, and if you've kind of taken it already, then I would definitely escalate it and take it to HR at that point. But at the very least, let's say if this is the first time this has happened, or maybe it's just the second time, at least try the redirecting them to, okay, what do we need to do about this conversation? And if they can't even go there, and like I said, it's just too negative all the time, then I would consider escalating it to HR, and maybe you need to have a conversation with HR in the room with this other person. So there's a third party kind of mediating what's going on. So that would be kind of my first gut instinct advice overall. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thank you. I have a couple questions on the topic of mentorship, and you mentioned that as an important thing to pursue. We had one of our attendees who mentioned kind of the reciprocal relationship with the mentor and kind of the importance of making the experience beneficial for them as well. Do you have any advice in terms of how to kind of set the tone for a relationship of reciprocity and maybe what the benefit you can really pitch to a mentor, or even whether folks should be considering offering to be a mentor as well?
Absolutely. I would do both. So one of the things that, depending on the relationship and who this person is, you could pitch to them, first of all, that, yeah, that's something they could, you're welcome to kind of be their guinea pig, so to speak, as if they would like to be your coach, and give you advice or, enhance their management skills. They can run things by you to see how they come across. So in terms of communication improvement, that could be one thing that they could get out of it as well. You could offer to mentor them in return if, again, that would make sense depending on your level in the organization or within the industry and your experience. Another thing to offer too is I'm happy to help you in any way. If it's giving them feedback or advice, maybe on a speech that they've written or, on something else that they're working on or a project. And offer to introduce them to people that you may know. So if you have people in your network that could be useful or helpful to them for a business opportunity or whatever it is, you can offer that up as well. So with that person, I would specifically think about how could I help them? What might they need in general? And from me also, and make a list of those things so you can pitch them to them. So those are some ideas that I would recommend that, the things they can get out of it too.
Great, thanks. And kind of a follow-up to that as well. I think one of the pitfalls of certain mentorship relationships, if you're not careful, is that they can tend to, you might be really enthusiastic and find somebody who you connect well with and can bring questions to early on, but then if there's not sort of structure in place or you haven't really articulated what you hope to get from that mentorship relationship, it can sort of peter out over time. Do you have any
Yep.
recommendations in terms of, I know there are more formal or informal mentorship arrangements. Do you encourage or suggest kind of providing a baseline structure and talking about, or making plans to how you'll sort of sustain that relationship over time?
I would go for or fall back on being more structured and a little more formal, but then I would ask them what works for them. Go with what works for them at the end of the day, because if they're giving their time to you, try to suggest it and say, hey, could we, meet for lunch once a month, or suggest a couple of options for structure so that you're giving them kind of a menu to choose from, and then let them choose what might work. But at least even if they say, like, can we have this just be informal, then try to make it a smidge more formal and say, that's fine with me. Do you mind if I touch base with you then at the beginning of each month and we can figure out what works at that time? Okay, fine. So go with what they want. Provide structure kind of as a collaborative, partnership. So you come up with ideas, let them come up with ideas, or choose something, meet in the middle, and then go from there. But erring on the side of at least some sort of structure that you'll have some sort of communication on a regular basis.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have time for one more question, and kind of still on this related topic of mentorship, and I think it'll be a good segue to information I would like to share with folks. So the question is, somebody is pursuing an external mentor. Is it appropriate to cold call, quote unquote, cold call someone on LinkedIn, or just reach out to somebody who you might not have a prior relationship with?
You can. That's the hardest way to find someone typically. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that first, but absolutely you can. If this is the perfect person, and you don't have any connection with them, or like a second connection in between, absolutely you can reach out to them, because you never know. Because I say that's not the ideal thing, but honestly, that's what I did for my master's degree from the University of Illinois. Is I contacted someone cold, and she agreed to be on my thesis committee, and is still a very close friend of mine, and has helped my career enormously. So absolutely you can do that. Just be prepared for rejection in some cases where they might not respond. But I absolutely would do that. Adam, did you have more to share with it or about it?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I just wanted to say, as an alternative to cold calling, I'll share a link in the post-event email that I send out today with the recording. a link to our Wiser network, and some on the call might be familiar with Wiser, but it is our student and alumni mentorship platform. So on there,
Great.
these are alumni who join Wiser and express, an interest in providing mentorship in various forms. So so that might be a smaller pond and an easier place to turn to than just kind of wading in the bigger waters of LinkedIn. So I'll share that link with everyone and would encourage folks who are not on Wiser to consider joining and start forming some of those relationships with other alumni and students. Yeah, so I think we're about ready to close. But thank you so much, Hallie, for all that you shared. Thanks everyone for joining today. As you may know, I do want to plug here at the end as well. Folks may know that today is UChicago Giving Day. This is a day-long, 24-hour celebration in support of the degrees, decades, and memories that make this university exceptional. I want to invite everyone to visit givingday.uchicago.edu to learn more and to consider making a gift today. Our career programming continues next week on Wednesday, April 17th with a webinar titled The Work-Life Myth. Instead of pushing for balance, learn 3 ways to feel more in sync with your life. And then a week later on Wednesday, April 24th, we'll be hosting a webinar on making sense of your 401k. Learn how to make sense of your retirement plan and maximize your savings during that webinar. So again, thank you, Hallie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Take care and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
You too. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We appreciate it. Have a good one.